Hello, welcome to the video. This is One Wheel Teal. This is going to be a breakdown and cleanup maintenance of my DMR that I fully modified. Alright, first off, we want to remove these two screws right here holding this rail riser for the scope. Now we're going to take off this screw, and the screw on the selector switch. Now that we have the screws out, as you can see, right here, we're going to have to tap these out because they're in there pretty snug. I use just like a file that's small enough to fit in there, or a screwdriver or anything. And then I usually use this Phillips head on the soft end here and just beat it out. Now you can see that I took the pins out, and you can see that the gun has started to try to separate itself a little bit. Make sure you keep track. I like to keep my pins identical to the way that they was in. So make sure you keep the screws with the pins and keep the selector switch with the little ball bearing and everything in it. Just keep track of that. And then release the upper from the lower, which should have your barrel attached to the hop up. Just be careful right here. Don't get to jerking and pulling real hard. Actually, on mine, I actually have a tracer unit built inside, so I got to be real gentle with mine too. Just get that separated and get all that stuff put to the side. Okay, so now I got the barrel extension off, and here's the barrel with the hop up. As you can see, the way that I have it, I do not have the spring on top up here, but there's one here at the bottom. The reason I don't have the one on the top is it makes it an utter chore to get this in on a Krytac, which it doesn't really affect it that much, because you have this spring here putting tension on it, and you have that one, so it kind of balances itself out anyway. Also, I did notice whenever I took this out that I have a little nick there in that wire. I don't know if I can get that to focus, but I have a little nick in that wire. Of course, I'll fix that. And as you can see, the LED unit is just a smidge loose, so I'll tighten up those little Phillips head screwdrivers. And also, I want to clean inside of this barrel, which, you know, it's not really dirty. I clean them all the time, so but if you want, this is basically how this works. So it fits pretty snug up to a certain point, and then when it gets to that point, it just stops. Getting back with you here for just a second, I guess I ought to tell you, this little clip right here, this white clip, you got to take this off to remove the hop up unit. It's pretty simple to do. I'll see if I can do it here on camera, but you just stick like a screwdriver or a fingernail in there, and you can just, it removes so easy. You just pop, there it goes. Okay, so back with you. It was a little dirtier than I expected. As you can see from this hop up rubber here. Also, this little brass bushing, I didn't mention it earlier, but it goes into the end of this max hop up, and I'll tell you what, it really holds it firm. And we're gonna have to knock this pin here out, and then we should be able to come to the hand grip here, take these screws out, and we're gonna take the motor out. Of course, we'll go a little bit further in depth with that. And of course, I kind of left this a little loose earlier today, and we'll have to get inside of this, which has our battery, and if we'll have to use a long screwdriver, which I have right here, and that fits down into the back side of this, and there's a screw right here where this buffer tube is, and you'll just have to take that screw off, and that lets us release this, which releases the upper part of this CNC gearbox. But I'll get back with you just in a moment. Okay, so we're back. You can kind of see the way that I got the light. Way down there in the bottom, you can see a Phillips head. Anyways, I'm going to get that screw out, and then we'll be able to take this off. It's just in there. You can push the screw through and push this grommet through too, that or washer, whatever you want to call it. And then that frees it up so I can get the wire out. And I'm going to pull the wire out, and I'll be right back with you. Okay, so now we got that that piece off, and the little washer there, or grommet, with the screw that goes into the buffer tube. We got that taken off. Now we're just left with this wire. We're gonna take this screws off here for the motor, and it should just pop right out. Okay, so now I got the cap off, and you can see the motor leads in here. We're going to remove these motor leads, and we should be able to pull the motor out. Now we got the motor out. You can see what type of motor I use. It's 1800 Infinity CNC. This extra wire here, it goes to attach to the negative side of this brush on this motor right here, and that's to give power to the max hop up unit. Anyways, there's two more screws down in here. I know you can't see them now, but whenever I take it off, you'll be able to see it and you'll know exactly where it's located. We're going to go ahead and take those two screws off down here, and that'll remove the hand grip. Once you get the two screws removed, it's as easy as just pulling straight down like this on the hand grip. And now with that out, let me get the light just right here. You can see the two screws. And those two screws is what holds to the bottom side of this gearbox. Okay, now comes the cool part about this CNC split gearbox. So you just pull a little bit forward like this and lift straight up like that. And as you can see, this little circle matches up with that little circle, and you run your pin through it, and that's what holds it down. The other part that holds it down is this little tiny hook right here. And what that does is that hooks on the front part of the lower. So it fully separates the two. So if you look in here, you know, everything's looking pretty good. The spring's in line and everything else. And as long as everything's functioning pretty well and everything's pretty lubricated inside of your cylinder, and everything's moving pretty good and stuff like that, see, you can't hear nothing. So that's still pretty good and lubricated up and sealed up pretty good and tight. I might not even take that out other than just pull this spring in the back. But down here, of course, these are your gears, and you can roll them and everything. You see that I got them pretty free and shimmed up pretty well. These are 13-to-1, just off-brand. I think it's CNC gear set. I'm a strong believer in buy where that you play at. So as you can see, this is where I usually play at, ACS Airsoft in Paducah, Kentucky. Good people down there if you ever get a chance to go by there. Some of the most friendliest people I've ever met. This is also the motor. I think we've already went over that. It's an Infinity CNC motor. But yeah, back to ACS Airsoft. I can't say enough good things about them. Day one I got there, met two guys. They were open about helping me get involved. Like, I've started playing airsoft less than a year ago today, and I knew by going there, I just had a standard old Krytac Trident, and you know, I wanted something that was going to be decent day one. And I went there and I played with them day one, had a blast. I took a lot of shots, took a lot of pain. You know, I even got a few shots in there once in a while, and everybody was well impressed with how the field was and how everything was managed. I just can't say enough good things about ACS. If you want to feel like family, like you're playing with a bunch of your family, minus the arguments of who's best and who's better, ACS, in my opinion, even though it's the only place I've ever been to, I can't say that hobby-wise that I've ever been to a better place that I felt more welcome. So if you ever do get a chance, like I said, it's ACS Airsoft. They have a few YouTube videos out there, and believe it or not, yours truly is actually in one of those Airsoft videos for the 4th of July video. But getting back to it at hand, we're going to go ahead and pull this lower part of this gun. As you can see, that's the wires for the tracer unit there. And really, I might not even pull it, but I'm going to pull it just for you guys. I might have to take this screw off. I don't think there's anything attached on the other side. Of course, this side, it doesn't work like it did originally with the Krytac. But just for you guys, we're going to pull this pin and pull this mag release and stuff, and we're going to go ahead and pull it out, just so that you know how everything works, and just so that you can understand how easy it really is to take one of these things apart. I've taken them apart in field at the place and cleaned everything up, but most of the time what I do is when I get there, I just take the upper off and pull the barrel out and clean it after every match. But what we're going to do next is we got to get this aligned just right, and we're going to go ahead and pull that out. Okay, so now we got the magazine release taken out, and you can start seeing that hole for on the other side to where that matches up. This goes through it, and this little clip right here is what catches your magazine and holds it into place. And when you press this down, of course, that spring actuates and allows that to drop the mag from the other side. Now, if you look on this piece, this is kind of a Krytac thing. I know you can't really see it real well, but there is actually a recess in there. So you want to make sure you get this lined up just right before you stick that on that recess. Because if you don't, you know, it's not going to seat right, and then you might have issues dropping the magazine out. Then we took the other piece out here for the selector switch, which is just a dummy selector switch. I haven't bought something to block it off, you know, because for some reason or another with this gearbox, I tried to drill it out the best that I could, and I missed the hole. So I'm gonna have to get another gearbox, and next time put it on a mill, get some die calipers out, get it dead on so that I can actually drill it out correctly. So I have to order me another lower, but right now it's just got a dummy gear in there. There's really not anything that it's controlling or anything like that. But on the other side, you want to set your selector, as you can see, between the safety and the fire. It just helps, it helps the lower to come on out a little bit easier when you do that. And then whenever you go to seat it back in, it should just fall right back in. I'm going to go ahead and get this pulled out, and when we get it pulled out, we'll take another look at it. Okay, so now we got it out. As you can see, I use a retro arms selector. It fits so much better in this selector switch, which is this little plastic thing here. And basically there's a shiny piece of paper on the other side of this, and as you can see, there's 3 little slots there. That tells you if it's safe, semi, or full auto. And the way this is setting right there should be in the center, and as you can see, the angle's still the same. And when this rotates, it's, you know, it's kind of cattywampus, I guess you would say. So whenever it goes like that, it shuts it off. But then whenever it rolls around like that, of course it moves a little bit and is able to select correctly. But we're going to go ahead and pull that off for the time being because we don't really need it. We're going to stick it up there with our other parts. On the other side, like I said, it was just a dummy gear that I stuck on there, and it was just so that we could hold that other selector and it didn't look just weird and out of place. You can actually see here where I drilled this out with a Dremel tool and tried to match up the gears the best I could, but I had a binding issue. It was just too much gear, and it would get kind of like caddied up like that, and it would make it almost an impossibility to turn it. And I ended up stripping out several gears trying to get it to work. So I said, well, you know what, I only need one side anyway, and I'm right-handed, so let's set it up for that. As you can see, we got a little bit of dirt here, a lot of carbon buildup and just gunk, probably dirt and everything else. I use bushings mainly because of the stress that I put my gun under. As you can see, these bushings, I got them also from ACS. I can't tell you the name that they are, but they're like 8mm bushings. And I took them, and what I've done is I stuck them on 1500 grit sandpaper and polished them up so that they're free. I also took the gears themselves and polished the tips on them so that they're free and able to move real well also. As you can see, these gears, they move pretty freely. I mean, there's nothing really holding them back. Yeah, I do have a little bit of slop wear in there because I didn't seat these bushings down into the gearbox. I just basically wanted it to be as free as possible. Could that lead to binding later on? Yeah, it possibly could. But at the same aspect, it could also wear out to a point to where that there's slop in it. But like I said, I got to get a new lower part of this split gearbox when they ever come in, and you know, redo it anyway. So it's not really a big deal. Basically what we're going to do here is I'm going to get some cleaning cloths. We're going to clean up a little bit around here. But as you can see, this thing is set up to take a MOSFET. We'll go ahead and take this portion of the Titan off. It's just held in there by a couple pins, nothing too big. I took the Titan off right here on this corner right here. It tells you basically what position that this gear here is in when it's all set down there. Then you have all of these little marks here, and that's for the sensitivity of your trigger. It sees the shine, I suppose, of your trigger there, and is able to pick out what level it is to make the sensitivity of your trigger just as fine as you want. It really comes in handy for, you know, in my best way of explaining it, I like my trigger not to move hardly at all. When I touch it, I want it to fire. I want it to be like them old-timey TVs that were like you just barely touched the metal contact on it and, you know, it changed the channel. That's how I want my trigger. So sensitive that if I drop it, it's going to shoot me. The reason why is that way whenever I pull the trigger, I don't have to worry about me pulling to the left or the right or anything like that and getting my shot off. I want it to be dead on. But as you can see, I kind of cleaned these bushings off with a rag, and they're pretty polished and everything. I'm not going to pull these gears off, but if I was to pull this gear here off, this reverse right here, lockout, what it would do is fling forward because it's under spring tension underneath here. So when you're going to take your gears off and actually, you know, start working on your gears, let's say they're not shimmed good or whatever, and you got a lot of side wear and stuff like that on them, then when you take that off, just know that you got to use a pick, which when I go fully taking it apart, I use this pick exactly, and I get in there and I hold that dude back. And then when I hold it back, then I drop my gear on there. But anyways, that's what it looks like taken apart. Like I said, these gears are set the way that they are and balanced the way that they are, but they work really well. 13-1 for a DMR, running that 1800 CNC motor. It's real torquey, really grabby. So the trigger response is just hair-like. Like I said, I got it to the very first one of those sensors for when I pull the trigger, and it's spot on. As fast as you can pull the trigger, it shoots one. Okay, we're back. I want to show you something. It's Slick 7 Glide X2. Now, I've had this stuff for quite some time. We use it a lot in slot cars. It's one of the biggest reasons why I use bushings versus the ball bearings, because this stuff right here is made for bushings. So what I did is I took these spacers off, and in between the spacers, I'm going to put one drop of this. And you don't know the difference this will make for these when it comes to how good they slide and everything else. And then I'm going to cap it off with a drop on the top. Just like that. Okay, now that I got the Slick 7 on there, it's a little shiny. We're going to get a little bit of grease on this makeup brush. Like I said, it's not much. We're going to actually rake most of it off. It's going to look something similar to that. Just basically cleaning off most of it. So, that's a little too much. Let me get it with my finger a little bit. All right, something like that. Just a shine of it. And we're just going to hit the tips around the edge, just like this. This gear is the most important. Not enough to gunk, but just enough to say, hey, there's some on there. Same way with these gears down here. We want them being quiet, but we don't want them slinging dirt. And this will also keep the selector on the other side of this Titan. It'll keep it clean so that you don't get any errors. Anyways, that is literally all the grease we're going to put on it. And we're going to end up putting just a drop for the whole thing of this silicone, and we're going to go over it also. Okay, I'm going to try to flip this while on camera here, and it's sitting real good. Anyways, I want to get back here, and then I'll get back with you. Okay, when putting this back on, you need to make sure that you line up the reverse lockout, and then you might have a little bit of a skew between your bushings here. You just kind of use your pick and kind of wiggle, get two of them in, which will probably be these top two. Get those two in, and then try to wiggle with your pick the other one, and it should fall right in. Not a big deal. And that's pretty much it. As one thing I did leave out, whoops, one thing I left out is my camera went off. Right here is your trigger. You need to make sure that falls in the hole too. But once you get it done, everything should be seated up, and it should be flush. As you can see, mine is. All the cracks are flush and laying clean. Then it's as simple as putting your 3 screws back in. We're going to do that, and then we're going to flop sides. Okay, now we're on the other side. As you see, I kind of cleaned it up a little bit. Still see a little bit of where I took where the flag fell off of it. But what we're going to do here, just the same thing. We're just going to put a drop with this 6-7 in here. Only difference is we're going to do a little bit of rotating on it. And if you're doing this and it doesn't flick that good and doesn't rotate that fast, you might have a bind somewhere, and you'll want to go back and look at it again. But anyways, we're pretty much done here. We're just going to stick this flag back on. It's not too hard to stick on, as you can see. And we're just going to rotate that back to its position that it was in before, which was about right there. You push this, you got to push it, and you can see the flat sides there. You want those flat sides to be on the top. Now, being this is under a lot of stress, I'm going to do this off camera, and I'll be back with you, and I'll show you kind of some of the ins and the outs of it. It's not a big deal. You can see these two little teeth on the ends of it. Well, if you get right down here, let me get it in the light a little bit. Possibly find some light here, maybe. You can see there's a little keyhole there. That goes in there, and then you just rotate those keys to the side like that, and it locks it into place. But what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and pull this out, because I got to change this spring to a spring that I can use for whenever I go to play. Before I pull it apart, I guess I should tell you how to. There's some screws here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 screws. We're going to take those 5 out. Okay, I got the screws out, and as you can see, 2 of the screws, which are the bottom screws here, are longer than the other 3. So just line them up the way that it looks in the gun itself. Now, before you do this next part, make 100% sure you have that spring out, because if you don't, you're fixing to have a spring go across your room, maybe in your eye or something. So please take that spring out first. It's and some of them don't have the quick spring like that is the quick change, but I will tell you, it's something you really want to invest in, because if you don't have that quick change, then you have to be really, really careful about taking one apart, because it can at any time just spring loose on you. But we're gonna take this off. Yeah, there we go. So as you can see on this, you can see the rails right there. In those rails, it gets really dirty, because that's where that piston goes back and forth on that rail. So it's constantly picking up dirt. Every time it's sucking in air from the nozzle, you know, there's dirt in the air and stuff like that, that stuff builds up. Now, of course, these parts are all aftermarket other than this cylinder head right here. Now, this cylinder head, it fits so good. It comes from Krytac. I think it's like one of the only parts left in my Krytac gun that is an original part. But I'll tell you what, that sucker seals to these full cylinders here, and I think this is a Prometheus, if I'm not mistaken. I'll get back to you. I'll put all the specs and stuff in the description so we don't have to make a big deal about it. But nonetheless, that cylinder head from Krytac, it's a double sealing O-ring, and of course I'll lube it up and everything. But I'll tell you what, it is a chore to get out of there, which is a good thing in my opinion, because that means it's sealing really good. And as you can see, let me see if I can get this on screen while holding it. Okay, I'm holding it. Now let's see. You can see that sucker is sealing. I'm pushing with some pretty good fortitude there, and I might hurt my finger, as you can see. I mean, that sucker's sealing. So I know it's still sealing, but it ain't gonna hurt nothing. As you can see, some of that stuff is collecting right there on the top. I want to clean that up, just make it a little bit better. Run some grease through here, and we're gonna do a grease thick silicone combo. Basically, mostly all I use the Uber Lube for, which you can get this at Walmart. It's actually a sexual lubricant, but it works tremendous inside of your barrel because it's so thin. As you can see, it's a whole lot thinner than this thick stuff here. This stuff right here is like motor oil, you know, but this stuff here, you know, let me move that real quick. As you can see, it moves real quick. Then you look at this, and when you move your hand that quick, it can't even keep the bubble up. So, you know, that stuff's a lot thicker. It's good in thick spots like this where you want it to kind of hang so that, you know, it stays lubricated a lot, and it's a little better than oil. But in spots like in your barrel, you don't want a thick mess in your barrel, and you're not going to be able to clean all of it out of your barrel. And I believe that leaving your barrel somewhat lubricated, real thin, like not enough to collect dirt, but just thin, is good for it, because whenever the BB hits inside of that barrel, it doesn't cause as much of a reaction to that BB, and it doesn't slow it down, and it doesn't stop the backspin of the BB or nothing like that. Worst case scenario, it might hit it and it might put a little side spin on it and make your BB at the end of the trajectory kind of dart a little to the left or a little to the right. But all that stuff can be fixed a little bit by the hop rubber, so not a real big deal. And anyways, I'm gonna take this apart, clean it, re-lube it. I'll show it to you again before I put it back together. We'll put her back together, and then we're gonna start reassembling the gun. Okay, so now I got all the parts out, and I've went through and cleaned all the dirtiness off of them, and I'm here to tell you that I've used a 150 in this spring. And as you can see, this is one of the failure parts that happens on gearboxes. Boy, she's straight up and down. All right, now on the back is the only spot that I've seen any kind of wear, and that's where the spring seats. But that might be where I was actually taking the spring out. Same goes here. Everything else, man, is smooth as glass. Inside the cylinder wall, now you can actually see how really polished that dude is. So I just cleaned all the gunk out of it. If you was wondering what type of nozzle that I use with my Krytac, it is a 21.25 millimeter. I've never had any issues with it, other than the one time that I tried to seat the hop up, and I seated it incorrectly, and that's where all those busted BBs came from. But anyways, I've since figured out a way to not make that happen. So anyways, as you can see too, on this cylinder head, which is the Krytac, you do see a little bit of wear there. Now that wear is from where this piston has hit, okay, but it's hitting so lightly that it's not really a concern of mine. So I'm gonna just let it go until it starts breaking down these teeth a little bit more. But as you can see, these teeth are in perfect condition. the first tooth is gone, but the rest are there. I wanted something a little bit more robust. I'm not trying to make no DSG or something out of this, which means dual sector gear for those that don't know. I'm not trying to spit out 80 or 90 BBs a second. I just want something that's going to spit out some BBs a little bit more realistically, you know, if I am in full auto mode. And I only go full auto mode whenever I see a cheater. And I think he got a little upset at me, but nonetheless, I'm going to start putting this thing back together, and I'm going to swap the spring out. I'm going to pack some grease into that bearing there on the guide rod for that spring. Then I'm going to put all this stuff back together, and when I get back with you next, we're going to start cleaning out the barrel with these. Now, it's going to come out dirty. This right here was how dirty the inside of this was. So, you know, it gets filthy, you know. Anyways, I'll get back with you. Okay, we're fully lubricated. As you can see, down in those cracks, I put grease as a base layer, and then on top of that grease, I put 3 drops of the silicone oil on both sides. And the same thing goes for the piston. I put a base layer of grease, and then in each section, which there's 3 sections, I put a drop of silicone oil. Around the piston head itself, I put silicone oil around it, and then I didn't put any inside of the cylinder. I put silicone oil around the cylinder head here, or that's the piston head, I'm sorry, cylinder head. Around the cylinder head, I put silicone oil also, and what I did is I pushed it in, then used the piston to push it out to where it was flush. Now what we're doing is we're mating this hole with that knob. Now once you get the knob lined up just right, then you're good to go. Then what you do is you set your piston gear down like that right there, and you want to make sure that it's on the tracks, and then you're going to set your flag here. You'll put the spring on it, and that spring is going to be attached to that right there. Okay, now it's in there, and I must stress, the spring's back to it. I must stress this the cylinder head has to be pushed to where it does not wiggle. Okay, it has to be on that little knob on the upper part of this gearbox. You want to make sure that's steady. It'll be in place. You'll feel it actually go into place. When it's in place, you're secure. You're good to go. It should be making no noise. Everything should be good to go, you know, just like that. Then it's as simple as putting the other side of this on over top of it and making sure it's mated up. When it's mated up, of course, you know, it's going to be flush, you know. And then you just put the screws back in it. Now, once you put the screws back in it, then comes aligning this with the gear, putting it back on. I'll get back to that when it's done, and then we'll have this gearbox set up and ready to go, and we'll get on to cleaning out the barrel. And just like that, we got her back together. Let's test for compression. We're going to hold the nozzle with one finger and flip over, hold the piston, and see if we can push it in. If you get any kind of feel back, you know you got a pretty good seal. And we're good. So everything's on the up and up here. All it is left now is just to slaughter back in. There's a little bit of wear I didn't see before. I don't know, maybe that's an issue, maybe it isn't. Make sure that the spring goes all the way down in the piston in the center of it, no problem. And then you just want to use one hand to kind of guide it while you're pushing with the screwdriver with the other. Once you get it in there, then start turning it to seat it. Okay, back at it. We got the motor back in, and as you can see where that it rotates, there's a little ball bearing there. We're going to put a little bit of Glide 7 on that just to keep her good and lubricated. We're going to stick this on, and we're going to give her a test run. As you can see, I stuck that pin in to hold the back side of the upper gearbox, and we're going to just give her a couple test fires. There we go. Sounds decent to me. Gonna put her together. All right, now we're to the point to where we're gonna clean out the barrel. And you always want to push one way, and that is through and out. And when it gets to the end, you'll pull the sleeve, this cloth off, and we're going to put another one on it, and we're going to keep doing that until they're clean. And I'll get back with you in just a moment. Okay, so it took 6 swipes through to get her clean. It's not perfect by no means, but it is a whole lot different from the very first one to the very last one, as you can see. So anyways, now we're going to do the part where I like to lubricate the barrel, and I use Uber Lube is the name of the brand, and I might do 2 or 3 of these, but I like to put a big old swab of it all over it like that, and then I'll just take my hand and just kind of make sure that it's good all on the front. I'll swipe the rest of it off, and then the same process, we're going to run it through, and I like to go one left and then one right depending on the rotation, and do that as many times until it comes out clean. When it comes out clean, I'm going to run one dry one through it, and we're done. Okay, now that we got the barrel clean, next what I want to do is take this hop rubber, and this hop rubber is getting a little used, as you can see right there, the imprint and stuff like that. I don't know how much longer it's going to last. It's been a good one. It actually is, like I said, one of the only parts of the Krytac that I have. So it's good. It's actually probably my favorite. I even like it better than a maple leaf, and I actually have a maple leaf that I tried to use, and it's not up to snuff compared to this blue. Anyways, I'm gonna lube it up also with Uber Lube, and I'm gonna get it all saturated, and then I'm gonna saturate the barrel where it goes. As you can see, there's a little bitty nub there that lines up with the barrel right there, and you got to line that up so it seats right. And when I do that, then it should be good and sealed, be ready to put back in to the hop up, and pretty much ready to go back into the gun. I'm gonna run a little bit of electrical tape around the wire that got skidded there a little bit, and that should be fine. Other than that, we'll be putting the gun back together. I did notice something whenever I was taking apart the hand grip here. On the back side right here, we have a fracture, and it might be where I dropped the gun, laid it down too hard or something, but either way you look at it, it's separated right there. So I might wait to put this hand grip on, but you know how to put one on by now. I've showed you. You put the screws in, you stick the motor in, you connect the 2 parts, these 2 leads. Now the leads are very important. I know which one's black and which one's red. You need to hook those up correctly because it is phase sensitive, and I guess it would make the motor return backwards, would be the only thing I would suspect. So you want to make sure that it's going in the right direction. But I could be wrong about that, but I've always been told you want to make sure that you connect the red with the red and the black with the black. But it just so happens I know which one's which on here, even though they're both taped up black. But other than that, I'll be putting the gun back together. It's pretty much over. You've done it. You know, if you've got this far, you've done all the hard stuff. All the rest of it now is just putting the pins back together. Like I said, I had to align that selector switch. Once it aligned, I stuck it back in there, held some pretty good pressure on it because there's a spring behind this that holds a ball bearing. Once I done that, as you can see, it now clicks into place, and it's pretty snappy. It's decent. Then I hooked the whole unit up to the Titan USB to check to see if the selector switch was right and see the sensitivity of the trigger. Everything's on the up and up, and it's working. And if you got a Titan, you'll know what I'm talking about whenever I'm talking about hooking it up to your Dean's connector. And running the selector switches and stuff like that, just to see if everything's working. That's something you have to check whenever you run one of those types of MOSFETs, because if you don't, your selector switch might be set on safety, but whenever you go into check it with the Dean's connector, it might be full auto. So you might have it backwards, or it might be somewhere in between where it's all jacked up and messed up. That's why another reason why I like these retro arms selector switches is because you can't really mess that cam up. It's stationary, unlike the one on the Krytac where it's gear. You have to mark the gear and stuff like that to make sure that you got it exact. So that's just something that you probably want to exchange out anyway. You might have to modify the selector plate just a little bit, like sand it off or whatever to make this work. But nonetheless, it's a way better decision in my opinion. It's just a lot less moving parts, and anytime in any kind of mechanical situation, less moving parts is better. But the next video after this is all said and done and I got all this put back together, I'm just going to run another video with the lesser power spring, because I put the lesser power spring in here. I think it's a 125. But anyways, and we're just going to test accuracy with it and sight in the scope. That'll be the next video. Thank you for watching. All right, as you can see, I got the gun back together and it's fully operational. I'm fixing to do a couple test shots. These will be my first test shots with it. I'm going to do a couple shots semi-auto and then some full auto. Now, there's one thing that I did do that I, in hindsight, wish I didn't. I left the Uber Lube on the hop rubber, and that tends to make it very hard to hop the BBs. I was supposed to dry it off after I put a little bit of it on there to massage a little of it in and then dry the inside off, but I didn't. And therefore, so my BBs are probably not going to hop real good right now. So I just got to shoot all that out, and eventually they'll start hopping good after I shoot a few through it. But we're going to go ahead and shoot just a few at this little orange building here. Yeah, they're hopping a little low, and I probably won't be able to fix that. I'm gonna try to put a little hop in and see if I can get it right. Yeah, it ain't coming up too good. I'm at my limit now. I'm at 4.5. If I go any more than that, I'm gonna start collapsing on the BB. I'll go back up a little. She's just gonna have to dry out. So there it is on semi-auto. I'm still using the broken hand grip, as you can see on the other side here. Get a good look at it here. It's fractured pretty bad, but whenever I stuck it on, I noticed that that the motor was still seated in there pretty decent and it wasn't causing any binding issues. So sorry about that truck going by. We have a lot of people who likes to drag race going out through here. But anyways, I'm gonna get a new hand grip for it and it should be good. This will be full auto. I'm just gonna run the mag out on it. You can also see right here whenever I shoot that the flash unit is working. And we're empty. Well, if you made it to the end of this video, I appreciate you watching how I took apart my DMR. I hope you enjoyed some of the parts and stuff that I used. By the way, this is the mask that I use when I go play airsoft. It's a dye i3 mask. I put a vinyl on it to make it look like multicam and cut down some of the shine. But if you would, please like and subscribe, and I'll catch you on the next video.